Hello, and welcome to Jeff Kagan Interviews. I'm Jeff Kagan. Jeff Kagan Interviews is a podcast where I interview executives of interesting and important companies in our ever-changing and exciting world. Today we have with us Brandon Barnham. Brandon is the Executive Director, Chief Technology Officer, and Assistant City Manager of Curiosity Lab at Peachtree Corners in the Atlanta, Georgia area. Welcome, Brandon.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
It's my pleasure. So after a private tour of Curiosity Labs, I found it a very interesting peek into the future of what smart cities will look like tomorrow. So I'd like to share some of that with you today. And Brandon, I've got several questions, but feel free to take this in any direction that you want to go that you think is important to help everyone understand. So to start with, tell us about Curiosity Lab and the mission.
No, thanks, Jeff. Really, Curiosity Lab was started back in 2018. As most people don't know, the city of Peachtree Corners is a new city, just incorporated in 2012. But its history was really built in the late 60s and 70s by a developer who got tired of seeing the brain drain leave Georgia, taking jobs outside. We were losing our workforce, so came way out here back in the 70s and started building office buildings to recruit technology-focused companies. And the modem was invented right here in Peachtree Corners, and the color printer and Scientific Atlanta all founded here. So really rich history of innovation. Our job base grew, our residential base grew with it because people want to live close to where they work. So today, as of last census, we're a little over 45,000 residents, but we were also a little over 45,000 jobs in the city. And so as the city got up and operational, we wanted to continue to create that healthy business environment. And how do we play on that path of innovation? And so I had the idea after a lot of research and looking in the market to say the one thing that was missing for companies in smart cities and IoT and autonomous vehicle was access to public infrastructure, easy access to it, right? But traditionally, it was very difficult for companies to go out and work with the city, and it would be kind of round peg, square hole kind of scenario. So we purposely built a living lab where we put in the infrastructure along the roadway, the traffic signal, and then open that all up free of charge for companies to come and use and test and develop and deploy. And that opened in September of 2019. And all of this as a setting for economic development, to grow job base in the city, to drive innovation in the city, and really reestablish those roots that started in the 70s.
When I went and I took a look at the place, it was like a toy store. It was like, it's just like, what is tomorrow going to look like? And we don't really know, but it was really inspiring because you really had a chance to test drive a lot of these different ideas. And I think that's so important. So you mentioned that you provide startups with a real world test environment. So what does that mean? And how is that shaping the city of Peachtree Corners?
Yeah, it's been an interesting path, both with the startup community as well as the corporate innovation side. So on that 3-mile stretch of roadway, 5 kilometers within a 500-acre existing technology office park that's got 10,000 employees and 3,000 to 4,000 residents that live and work in this environment. We redesigned the roadway where us as the human drivers drive on the 2 inside lanes, and we built outside lanes that are purpose-built for autonomous advanced vehicles. We put in a conduit system for fiber that runs along the entire corridor, has 24 locations that companies can tap into that fiber network, and then put in a traffic signal so anyone working in intelligent transportation systems can have access to real-time traffic and traffic controllers. And then partnered with T-Mobile because we understood that not all of this can run on fiber. A lot of this is going to have to be on the network, and 5G is going to play an important role in that. So they were one of our founding partners. They stood up all the 5G infrastructure. And we're very fortunate because we actually have all 3 bands in the city. So you can test on millimeter wave all the way down to low band. So you really see how your product reacts on the market when it's testing on that network with them. And then, yeah, it's, how do you get companies out here that are testing different applications from radar sensors to LiDAR sensors to environmental, and just making all of that infrastructure, the light poles, the street lights, all of that available, even underground.
It's funny. I try to think about what living in the cities of tomorrow will be, and we see it on movies, science fiction movies, and so much of that will be real and so much of it won't be, but we don't really know because it's going to all change every year goes by as we go forward. But I was really impressed with the Curiosity Lab. It takes your imagination to a new level. So I remember there was a 3 mile, and you had mentioned a 3 mile city street that truly, it revolutionized the idea of smart city living, smart city testing. So tell us about the idea of this city street of the future coming to reality.
Yeah, as we think of, the movement of people, the movement of public transportation, logistics, all of those things that happen in our day-to-day life, how do cities improve that as we look to the future? How do we make the roadway more efficient, but also safe? What about all those assets underground? So that 3 mile section, you get to really see companies think about what that future of the roadway and underground looks like. So we've got, video analytics that are, detecting vehicle classification and speed and movement. And then you combine that with the connected vehicle technology. And now we're detecting pedestrians in a crosswalk, and we can broadcast that out 200 yards down the road to an oncoming vehicle so that they know there are people in that intersection. I need to be more aware. So making that roadway safer. Worked on putting sensors underground in water lines. So we have, sensors reading for water pressure change. And, just last week, unfortunately, Atlanta had some pretty big water main breaks in downtown. And these are the type of sensors that can help with some preventative maintenance because it catches those early leak detections. We've even got a startup that put pipe underground to do underground robotic delivery. We've installed a little over 1.5 miles of 18-inch pipe, and they are running robots through it to deliver packages and goods. So even getting to, Jetson type future thinking of how we move goods around cities and reduce traffic off of our roadways.
So is Peachtree City, is this Curiosity Lab, is this and how do you see the future of these smart cities? Is it going to be I'm losing my train of thought. Internally or implanted technology, or is it going to be like where you're going to have to tear up the roads and lay fiber and lay sensors, or is it all externally? I mean, I remember listening to a Qualcomm presentation not long ago, and they were talking about it being both, a little bit of both, and but as they've gone forward over the past several years, it sounded like they were not going to be digging up the roads as much with all these internally planted technologies, but it was going to be, I guess, car to car or car to sensor. And so, where do you see the future going?
Yeah, I would break it into 3 categories, really. There is still going to be the need for physical infrastructure where there will be some, digging of the road, reconfiguring. I think we'll see less of that than we have in the past, where we move into that second phase of, there's already streetlights, there's already traffic lights, there's already vehicles out there. How do we start to utilize those assets that are currently in place? Because you can do a lot with those. Right now, we're working with a LiDAR company called Assitant, and we put their LiDAR on a 62,000 car intersection. So 62,000 cars moving across this intersection every single day. and it's a 5-lane divided highway. What happens when a pedestrian gets in that roadway and they can't clear that crosswalk in time when that countdown? Well, you can use this technology to hold that traffic light to let them clear before they have to run for their life across it.
Right.
Starting to think of that, and that's just putting sensors on the infrastructure that's already in existence. And then as we think about the future of where smart cities is going, now we're starting to get these sensors and LiDARs and assets out there. We get into the digital world, right? All this technology is great, but if it's not being operationalized, does it really make an impact for a community to call yourself smart? All of this data that's coming from here should help cities improve and integrate new operational impact to vehicles, to pedestrians, to their internal staff. So that's where you really get into the digital and the data side of the house.
It's interesting watching it all develop and evolve over time. So tell me about the traffic infrastructure, how it's changed over the years as you deploy all these new smart technologies. And are there any advancements that have stood out that you want to talk about, or tell us about what recent technologies are developed that you'd like to highlight with us today?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the LiDAR and how we're bringing safety to the pedestrian in the intersection. And then, there's been a lot of discussion over the last few years on CVDEX, connected vehicle to everything. And we have been a big proponent of that and the safety that it can bring to our roadways and the efficiency it can bring, because you can use it for things like transit signal priority. So if you've got a bus schedule that's running behind, you can actually use connected vehicle technology to start to give them that green light so that they can get the schedule back on time, which impacts people's day-to-day life. But one of the technologies that's really stood out to us lately that we've been working closely with Audi and a company called Spoke is an onboard connected vehicle device about the size of a cell phone. So now that you've got a small form factor, you can start to think about applications of putting this on bicycling. We have a huge cycling community in our city. We call them the spandex crowd because they are avid cyclists. I've got an intersection, during the week, only 100 of these bicyclists cross this intersection Monday through Friday. But then Saturday, there's 600 of them that cross this intersection.
Wow.
That's a big change. And currently our traffic signals were not intended for that change in the type of vehicle crossing it. So this technology lets us to start to adapt those signals to be aware of that. And then you think of our roadway workers, right? They park the truck, they pull the lawnmower off, and then they're cutting grass for 3 miles down the center stretch of a 55-mile-an-hour roadway. Wow. How many times do we hear of our construction workers getting injured? Now we can put those devices on them so that they're made aware of the vehicle, so vehicles can be more present and aware, because we're all distracted when we're driving. We know that. So bringing that awareness, and Audi is looking, and they're integrating all of this into the vehicle itself. So on your dashboard, you will get those alerts that there's a cyclist around the corner, or there's going to be a road worker coming up on your left side, because it's got to be integrated with the vehicle at some point.
And does that get transmitted to the vehicle from other vehicles, or does it get transmitted to the vehicle from the sensors on the side of the road?
Yeah, so you'll have a combination of all three. You'll have the sensor on the person itself, so whether that's the bicyclist, the construction worker, you'll have the information coming from the sensors that are on the side of the road, your cameras, your LiDARs that are detecting what's happening. And then you have that direct vehicle-to-vehicle communication. So it's telling each other where they're at. And we're somewhat there with the sensors on the vehicle. There's just another layer that it gives you. And being able to do some of this on the cellular network instead of a direct, device to device is really going to help from the safety awareness.
Listening to you describe this, the city of the future, it really sounds so interesting and so safe and so innovative. And it's really, we've been watching it grow over years, not too many years, but over years. And it's going to be interesting to watch how it continues to grow and change over the next 5 years, 10 years. So the Curiosity Lab 5-year anniversary is coming up. How has it helped the city and the economic development as a driver?
Yeah. It's hard to believe. September will be 5 years. We've been this, and it's been, opened it right before a global pandemic started. So
That's right.
perfect time to open a living lab where you need infrastructure. But we've managed through it. Got very creative, and we actually just onboarded our 138th company that has used Curiosity Lab to test, develop, deploy, demonstrate their technology in the space. So hugely excited about those numbers of just both startups and corporates coming together to innovate over the last 5 years. And then from an economic impact, because that is a measurement for us as a city, and because this is all publicly funded by the city. They've been the investment arm in this. Over the almost 5 years, we've had major relocations of companies who have relocated jobs in their business to the city, and as part of that have come out and said publicly that the reason they did was because of the private-public partnerships that were being built through Curiosity Lab. So you combine all of those relocations, expansions, we've created 2,700 new jobs and $1.2 billion worth of investment into the community. So that's a win, right? Considering the investment that the city's put in this, it has surpassed what we thought possible.
Really? So what are some of the key wins?
We did one of them, is probably one of you work in local government, one in a lifetime opportunities that we did get. We actually were able to secure the largest economic development project in Gwinnett County's history, the county that we sit in is 200 years old, a company called Intuitive Surgical. So they're based in Sunnyvale. They make a robotic surgery device called the Da Vinci. And it's, where the doctor sits on the side with the ports. They were looking for an East Coast headquarters, did all their research, hired the big firm Deloitte, to do their site selection, came down to Peachtree Corners and Research Triangle, which is where a lot of the biomed is. What pushed us when you took all the incentives that both states threw at them, what pushed them over the edge was the partnerships that we had built with corporate like T-Mobile and UPS and Bosch and Cisco, and said that's where we want to be. We're an innovative company. We're innovating in the future. So chose us. 1,200 new jobs, $600 million campus right inside of Tech Park. So that was a big win. One I will probably never see again in my government lifetime.
Well, you never know.
That's true. We'll keep trying. That's for sure.
It's exploding, and you never know what tomorrow's going to bring.
Yeah, and then another one I think that aligned well, which was really cool to see, is you start to think about the buildings and how buildings have to become smart to help cities continue to be sustainable. Was ASHRAE, which is the American Standard for Heating, Refrigeration, Air Engineers. So they set all the policies for indoor, heating and air, and work with the engineers across the globe. So they moved their global headquarters into Peachtree Corners, took a 1973 building and actually turned it net zero. So that's, and so they help us. And so how do we start to implement those kinds of learnings into our campuses, into other buildings, and working with the real estate community? So, and that was about 175 jobs they brought.
Well, one of the goals, I guess, of Curiosity Lab is to create an innovative ecosystem, both here in the United States and internationally. So how has this national and international outreach worked out over the years? And what do you see? How do you see it expanding going forward?
Yeah. The goal as we built the lab was to always be that kind of walk development for technology, for companies to have that space where they can prove out their technology and then scale it. I mean, the whole point of this is to scale technology for all cities to be able to develop and test. And so we work with cities across the country that learn from the things that we're doing. We learn from the things that they're doing. All right, one of our great partners is the North Texas Innovation Alliance, where they're just out the metro side of Dallas. And so we do a lot of sharing and learning from each other on that. and then they get to, learn from companies that are deploying in the real world environment. So out of the 138 companies that have used our facility, 70 of those have been international companies. And so as we think of the North American market and its, role in smart cities, why can't Peachtree Corners be that soft landing pad for these international companies as they enter in the market and then get exposure to the other cities? So we view it that way. We started with 5 countries where we had formal arrangements with those countries and entities inside the space. One of them kicked off was the Le French Tech program, where the French government started a program to help support companies' entry into North America. And we were selected among one of the first 5 places across the U.S. for that program to kick off. We're now expanded to 9 countries across the globe that we have actual formal arrangements with. So I think we'll continue to see that grow. We stay pretty connected in the international community. And then the national, obviously, side is here, which is kind of funny that we actually have less national than we do international, but that's how it goes sometimes.
Yeah. You had mentioned the North Texas Center. I'll be talking with them as well on a separate interview. How many of these smart city environments are there in the United States?
Yeah, so there's none in the world that offer companies what Curiosity Lab offers, from a testing, deployment, integration, security side of the space. But when you pull back and just go to pure smart cities and implementing technology to improve lives, we're seeing more and more pop up all across the country, right? You've got Cary, North Carolina. You've got a lot going in Fort Worth and Richardson. You got, Carlsbad out in California doing incredible things, Aurora, Illinois, and then you've got the Colorado Smart Cities Alliance with what Tyler's doing, and really growing the smart city base in Colorado and Colorado Springs and Denver and Aurora, all doing incredible stuff. You're seeing those really start to find what matters to their community, right? And that's where you have to start when you're starting your smart city journey, is what impact and what matters in our community today that we can use our people, and technology is just a part of that to help provide a better service to the resident.
Yeah. It's not just the U.S. phenomenon. These smart cities are global, international.
Yeah.
I understand you're going to be going to Barcelona for this year's Smart City World Congress. What do you hope to accomplish there? What is it that you're most excited about?
Yeah, twofold, right? You think probably the smartest place in the world, Singapore, without a doubt. They're well far ahead of anyone in the smart city space. And what we tend to see, and why I like Barcelona, is Europe tends to lead in the kind of clean tech sustainability. And so you get to learn a lot kind of ahead of time from what's happening in Europe around that. The EU puts a lot of funding behind that. And we're starting to see that trickle into the U.S. and what does sustainability look like in the U.S. versus, the learnings that they're doing in Europe. So you get a really good global perspective from all the different cities across the world on how they're implementing different strategies to improve their community.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a really exciting event. Curiosity Lab has been in the smart city game for 5 years, with your anniversary coming up. So what do you believe is ahead for smart cities, and where cities who are interested in heading down that path, where should they start?
Yeah, I think we're starting now in the smart city space to see, in the U.S., we'll just stay on the U.S., is, you've got a big push in transportation because we are a transportation logistics, and rich environment. So we're seeing a lot of development in the technology around that and how those impacts impact our daily life as a resident, right? When you're running to work, when you're going to your job, when you're going to the grocery store, the impact of traffic on your day-to-day life is probably one of the highest things that you face every day. But now we're starting to see what are the impacts of the data that is coming off of devices and technology, and the shift from kind of the fanfare of technology in smart cities to what does it mean for the people? What does it mean for the resident? And cities are only as smart as the people that they have inside of the operation, right? That's who really is going to make the difference, and it's going to be the staff. And you're starting to see that, right? You're seeing more cities hire chief data strategists, chief information officers. The CTI CIO role is increasing within cities. So that's going to be the big shift I see going forward, is just the investment in the talent inside of local government to really take advantage of the technology that's been there and is continuing to grow and change, but you still need those people. And that's for a community, like I mentioned, just your community better than anyone, right? You know the pain points, you know the phone calls you get, you know those services that you provide. How do you make them better? Start on a small scale. You don't have to start on a large scale, but and react to what's happening in your community.
It's amazing listening to you how much our world has changed in the last several years and how much it's going to continue to change going forward. So I'm going to ask you to pull the camera back and let's look at this from a longer term historical perspective. What's the future of Curiosity Labs? What's the future of the smart city?
Yeah. For us, we are in the process of expanding our infrastructure. So as we talk about, crawl, walk, run, when we talk to our startup companies, make sure you've tested this, validated this in a controlled environment. Curiosity Lab in its current build is really that next walk phase. It's not overly complicated, but you get real world testing. So now we're seeing companies are truly graduating through that process. Now they need those harder scenarios, the higher density of volume. So we're expanding our infrastructure to include, the 60,000 car a day corridor, putting infrastructure in our downtown where we're holding public concerts that are bringing 4,000 to 5,000 people on a site at one time. How does it manage that? So that's how we see our growth. We're continuing to invest in autonomous vehicle because we do believe that is an important part of communities, will have an impact on communities, both in the public transportation side of the house and how we move groups of people, especially as we see the increase in micro-mobility or micro-transit services, like direct community services. I think AVs will play a big part in that. So we're investing in dedicated lanes that are expanding outside of Curiosity Lab. So we'll continue to increase that infrastructure to continue to give companies more access to more information and more volume. Smart cities, I think, is no different. You'll see them start small and then grow and have their impact. One city that visited us was Sugar Land, Texas, and love the name. It's like one outside of ours. And they just made a huge investment to upgrade all 82 of their intersections to the latest in technology to improve transportation. And that came out of conversation. And smart cities is all about connection and conversation because we're all facing similar challenges. How do we help one another?
That's true. The smart cities is such a new revolution. It's come a long way in just the last few years, but it's going to go even further. Yes. And it's not like you're going to reach an endpoint. It's going to just continue to evolve, and with new technologies and new ideas. And like you just said, thinking people with ideas. And that's where all these amazing ideas for the future come from. And we're just along for the ride. Well, Brandon, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us today. I'd like to also thank the viewers as well. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you'd like to be a guest on Jeff Kagan Interviews, I invite you to get in touch with me by email at jeff@jeffkagan.com. Check the website out also, jeffkagan.com. Take a moment, look around. I promise you'll find it exciting and interesting. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.